Welcome to our podcast today. It's called This Day podcast, and I'm Seamus, and today I'm joined by Mike here. And over the coming weeks and months, we're going to be discussing the big existential questions of life. Who am I? What's the purpose of my life? Where am I going? Am I just a random accumulation of atoms, or is there a real purpose to my life? Is it just eat, drink, and be merry, or for tomorrow I die? A lot of people nowadays live for the weekend. Thank God it's Friday. You hear this all the time. And so we're going to be looking at some of the things we probably all think about and in our quiet moments, but never really discover. And so today we'll probably be looking at some things, we'll be considering one particular question: who am I, as in our origin, where we came from, not so much our identity, but our origin, the origin of man. And, it's a fairly big question. And so Mike is going to, have you any thoughts on that as an initial thing there, Mike?
Well, I suppose those three existential questions, Seamus, who am I, what's my purpose in life, and where am I going? The only one of those that really concerned me from an early age was where am I going when I die. But what my purpose was in life at that stage, or who am I, never entered my mind till, I suppose, my mid-20s. And then I asked, well, if I heard someone say about the Big Bang, and I said, well, am I just a conglomeration of atoms that suddenly came together at a random?
Random, yeah.
And, when you think of it, an explosion, if you throw a grenade into any place, or look at Gaza, you don't see any order or beauty.
Absolutely.
So, bangs and explosions, you'll always get disorder.
Yeah.
Never order out of disorder.
Like a clock, all the components of a clock. It's like, thinking if somebody just threw them together. And they come together. It's nearly comparing it to that, isn't it?
Yeah, like if you get all the separate components, as you say, and throw them up in the air.
Come together.
Will they ever come together and be able to tell the time? I mean, if we have even a modicum of intelligence, we can see that can never happen unless
absolutely.
There is a designer behind it all.
Yeah. And then there was a theory, we used to hear about evolution a lot, and it's taught in schools on the curriculum. I think even still, and we all have taken it for granted that evolution was a fact, but it was never actually even the scientists themselves never said. Isn't that true? That they never said it was actually a fact. It's just a theory.
Yeah. That's interesting because, science itself, the basic tenet of science is there has to be some proof, and it has to be observed in order to be true. It can never be the result of a theory. And yes, they're proposing theories left, right, and centre, which is not science at all. And I remember one example I read about and heard about indeed was Nebraska Man. I mean, there's many instances there: Piltdown Man, Java Man, Nebraska Man. But Nebraska Man is interesting because it was based on one single molar tooth.
But this guy found in Nebraska, skeleton found in Nebraska.
It wasn't even a skeleton, it was just one tooth.
Okay.
And they asked an artist to build up an ape man out of that tooth, out of plaster and everything. That was brought around the world. And but the sinister thing about it was that in the Scopes trial of 1925, it was proven on the basis of that skeleton, which was a hoax. And they even claimed it to be a hoax at the end of the day. But the Scopes trial concluded that, because this proved that evolution must be true, then they stopped. It meant that in America, every school was not permitted to teach creation any longer. And as far as I know, that's the case today based on that. It was all in a hoax.
Yeah. And we heard about another man called Piltdown Man. That's not from South Kilkenny, Piltdown.
Piltdown Man is another interesting one because he had these three men came across bits of bone, and they brought this to. It was a very exciting sensation at the time.
Why was it called Piltdown? A matter of interest. Was it
Piltdown in Nerion, actually, in England?
Oh, was it? Okay, right.
And they were even knighted, the three of them, for this wonderful discovery. But when it was looked into a little more carefully, they found that it was based on the jawbone of an ape. and then they got some human teeth. Yeah, and actually filed them down.
Yeah.
And then they got some bromine solution to paint over to give the appearance of age.
Right.
And then they came up, hey presto, with half ape, half man, and proving the missing link. But then after looking into it further, they found that it was all a hoax. And they had to agree to that it was.
We used to see the descending, ascending apes rising up slowly until they get to stand, the caricature of the...
Yeah, exactly. From crawling, then to upright, and then to walking.
Yeah.
But, that's still taught in schools as well.
That's right,
Which is incredible.
It's unbelievable, and in this day and age, that something like that is still taught on the curriculum in schools. I gather it is. Maybe I'm wrong there now.
Yeah, well, I'm open to correction, but I understand that it is.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, to be honest with you, in some school books. But another one I thought, Seamus, was the eye itself. Darwin, with all his origin of the species, one thing that depressed him more than anything and causes depression was that he said that if the evolution of the eye, these are his own words, is an actual impossibility. And that he concluded that such a thing as that would be absurd in the highest degree. That's Darwin's own thoughts on it. So
imagine that. Kind of speaking against himself there.
He was, He thought he had the answer for everything else, but when it came to that, he was just flummoxed altogether.
Yeah. I'm sure that we'll be coming back to some of these things again over the weeks and months and so on, please God, and we'll be joined by friends along the way as well to discuss these things probably in more detail. But I think we can, for today, conclude that man is not a random accumulation of atoms, or evolution doesn't really have the answers, and apes, descent from apes doesn't make sense really either. So at this point we're going to, consider the where we go for answers, and thankfully we have in our possession in most houses a book that will absolutely give truth about the origin of man, and it's no other than the Holy Bible, which is still the best-selling book in the world. And do you want to kind of mention some just main things about the Bible? Some people say, how can you believe the Bible? We're in a very enlightened age. Do we need an old book like the Bible to get our instruction from now? What would you say, Mike?
That's one of the things that really did get me thinking in my mid-20s. Could the Bible be trusted? Because I didn't want to be trusting my whole eternity on something that was fallible.
An ancient book.
An ancient book that was full of error and that was fallible in every area,
Yeah.
And but then I found that, it was also the most translated book as well as the best-selling book. And when you think of it, it was put together over 1,600 years.
That's right.
By over 3 continents.
3 continents, yeah.
By, everyone.
40 different people.
Yeah, 40, 40 different authors. And when you think of it, some of these authors, you had a king, you had a prime minister, you had a shepherd, you had a tax collector.
That's right.
You had a doctor, and you had a fisherman, and the whole spectrum of society there. And yet they all, over different generations, came together with one conclusive book that didn't contradict itself.
And in that sense, the Bible, there's no other book like the Bible, because any other book you read, has one author. And so here's a book that has 40 authors, as Mike said there, over a period of 1,500 years, put together by people didn't even live in the same generation, and people that were from a different backgrounds. Some of them were very unlearned men, like fishermen, and then there was a doctor, Luke, and Paul was an academic, Peter was a fisherman, and so they all had a contribution in their own time, and yet it all comes together as if it was one author, and again that beggars the answer that it was one author, and he put the God we're talking about, and he just put, by inspiration, he revealed his truth to all these men. That's
basically it. And to show how that had to be supernaturally put together by the Holy Spirit, inspiring each of these men to come together with one concise book.
Yeah.
You know, I remember somebody there now that we both know had a serious enough accident where they broke their shoulder.
Yeah.
And you've often heard of Chinese whispers, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, where one man gives some information to another and then goes around
down the line,
down the line, maybe 20 people, and
what comes out at the far end is far different.
Yeah, totally different.
It's art, yeah.
And in this situation, there was only 6 people involved. And in one case, it was told the shoulder was broken. In another situation, it was transpired that it was the leg.
Yeah.
And then we were told that, you know, it was neither in a third situation. Now, that's just believe, 6 people.
Yeah.
Who you to believe? Who you to believe?
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah, that's true.
So if it can happen like that, then you know, when there's 40 authors over 3 continents, over 1,600 years, and from all walks of life,
exactly.
As the word, as the Bible itself says, it's inspired by God. By God.
And there'll be many other proofs of the Bible that we'll be looking at as well. You know, I suppose some of the greatest things are fulfilled prophecy in the Bible. You know, that's a great proof. The things that have been prophesied back in the Old Testament have been, you know, you can see how they've been fulfilled in life and in the history of the world. And then, you know, changed lives. People that have read the Bible have had life-changing things happen to them.
Experience.
But for today, I suppose, you know, we're going to look at it, you know, for some answers to this problem of the origin of man, you know, because we believe that the Bible does have absolute truth about that and real answers to the origin of man. And I suppose, you know, the best place to go is back to the beginnings of the Bible, and that's the book of Genesis, chapter 1, and verse 27. It says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female created he them. And basically what image means is God created man as a spiritual, rational, moral, and immortal being. 4 things. You know, so man is not just like a dog. You know, he has a spiritual side to him. He has a rational side, mind, that's the mind. Moral, you know, right and wrong. A man knows, you know, innately what's right and wrong. And the Bible teaches that man will live on. You know, after this life, there is another life. So that's massive stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it is, absolutely,
yeah.
I mean, it really does get one thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, you know, and then you see the Bible, in spite of all the proofs that are there, you know, it's still the most attacked book in the whole world.
Yeah.
And, you know, people try to disprove every aspect of it. And, of course, if you disprove it from the very first verse, then why can you trust the rest of it?
True.
And it would fall down like a pack of cards. And that's where evolution does such damage.
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to disprove it and explain the hope that's in us as well, don't we?
Yeah. The Bible teaches that man is not just, you know, people. Sometimes you hear people saying we're no different than the animals. We're just like a dog. When you die, you go down to the ground. I've heard people saying that, into a hole in the ground. That's it. You're finished. But the Bible teaches that man is a body, soul, and spirit. Now, the soul and spirit are difficult to separate in ways, but just think in terms maybe of the body and the spirit. And animals have bodies, and when they die, but the man has a spirit. Now, that's the God connection. That connects man to God. And so that's the big difference. Like when you see a corpse, I'm sure most people have been in a funeral parlor, and you know, I don't like talking about these things, but you see a corpse, and what you see when the person dies, or even better still, if you ever saw somebody dying. Did you ever? I never did. Did you?
I did once. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. And you see the life going, and that's and what's there is just a shell.
Breathing their last.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. The spirit is gone. The real person is no longer there. So, where's he gone? Where's the spirit gone? That's something we need to think about and talk about later, maybe.
When you talk about the, you know, animal life and that, you know, if man is no different from an animal, then at the end of the day, he's no different than a feral dog or a cat. Just as you said yourself, James, goes into the ground. But you know, there's something more to it. I know my animals that I have at home, like we have 2 cats, a dog, and some hens, but you know, they've no appreciation of music or no appreciation of poetry.
Yeah.
And someone once said that if you put a monkey at a typewriter and ask them to write out the first verse of the Bible or the Shakespearean sonnet, in 100 billion years it would never happen.
No.
So there has to be something more,
absolutely,
beyond us that brings all this together.
And because we have a spirit, then we actually are accountable to God and responsible for our actions. So you start to see the difference between a man and any other. God created man in His own image, and that's what it means. They're rational. We have a mind to think we can, and God has given us a free will as well. Which is a wonderful thing, and we'll be, discussing some of these things down the line. But just to say that, I suppose at the outset that the difference between a living being and a dead one is the spirit, and that's what makes the difference between a man and an animal. The fact that we have that connection with God, the spirit.
Because you have a dog and a cat or whatever, they can't communicate with God, but whereas we can, and we can appreciate God, and I think the reason why so many have an agenda out there to disprove the Bible is purely really because they know that if they accept it, then they know that there has to be a higher being God. And if they do that, then they know, I think you mentioned it yourself, James, that they have to be accountable to this God.
That's it.
And man doesn't want it. He's a being that wants to be in control of his own life.
His own destiny,
His own destiny. But God, wants something better for him than that.
Yeah. Interesting, very interesting stuff there, Mike. And God could have made us like machines if He wanted to, and so that we'd have to obey Him. But He gave us that free will. That's another wonderful thing, and we'll be looking at that. And so I think maybe for today, we'll maybe leave it at that. And don't forget to text and email or phone in if you have any queries or observations on what you heard today. And so we'll sign off for today. If you have any other, and else to add to that, Mike.
I think we'll do it for today. There's so much, you'll never get everything in one go.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of more interesting things to come.
Yeah.